My people, how y'all are? It's your boy Adeleke on this beautiful Juneteenth, Friday, June 19th, 2020. Man, it's a beautiful day. And amazing thing about today, so many amazing things about today, but the amazing thing about today is that it's just such a beautiful day. In spite of all the crazy that's going on in the world, so much beautiful is coming out of this day, and I'm glad to see it. Like for a lot of people, it seems like Juneteenth is a relatively new concept, but growing up a Texan, we knew Juneteenth. We know Juneteenth, like it's not something that's automatic. It's not something you just learn in school. I think I was probably 10, maybe 12 years old, the first time I ever heard of Juneteenth, you know? Because see, in Texas, we taught to remember the Alamo. Remember the Alamo, remember the Alamo. And that's celebrated in school, you know? Which is directly linked to a lot of stuff that's going on right now. They talk about how right now as the conversation's going on the national stage, how these guys are the losers of the war. How these guys are the ones who are being celebrated, who were the traitors. These people killed other Americans so that they could violate the laws of America. They were so adamant about owning another human being that they was willing to kill people that they saw as their equals, other law-abiding citizens, so that they can do that. I heard this Marine break it down. I was like, yo, But if you think about it, I've been sharing this thought with people for the longest time, other Texans mostly, because Texans really get it more than most other Americans because of our history and the way it's taught, right? But we remember the Alamo, Sam Houston, David Bowie, what's my man Travis, all these cats. They fought against Santa Anna, which is worked for the Mexican government. He was a general for the Mexican government who was half black. And he basically brought troops into San Antonio to keep the slave traders out of Texas, or out of what was Mexico. Well, at that time it was Tejas, right? Santa Anna fought to keep the slave traders out of Tejas, and fought and almost beat those guys at the Alamo, except there was something else going on deep in Mexico, and he got called into Mexico, into the interior of Mexico, and he had to leave Texas, or Tejas, and those guys at the Alamo looked at that as a victory, and then they went straight over to the United States, right? And asked to be part of, and that's when they were included into the United States. And then a few years later, the Civil War kicked off, right? But the whole thing about those guys was to remember the Alamo. Remember the Alamo is what we was taught growing up. That's what we learned as our U.S. history, or our Texas history. Remember the Alamo. We took trips down to San Antonio to see this fort, which is a ruin, a museum now. It's a monument to the treachery of the slave trader against the United States, and it stands as a historical monument of the history of Texas. Yo, think about that. And then we have Juneteenth, because the Juneteenth is 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. 2 years. And for some people say, the guy who came to let everybody know got killed along the way. Yeah, I'm not surprised. And then some say, well, the slave traders didn't want to get rid of that yield. They had too much cotton out there and they needed harvested. It's like, well, let's get one last harvest so we can try to recoup some of our losses from this failed war. Sounds like the type of treachery that a loser would submit to. Losers. That's the history of the Confederate Army. That's the history of Texas. That's the history of the Alamo. You know what I mean? So remember the Alamo. But while you remembering the Alamo, remember Juneteenth, So like I grew up in Texas. I didn't know about the Alamo. I knew about the Alamo since I was in elementary school. But I didn't learn about Juneteenth till I was probably like 10 years old. The first time I went to Austin to visit my mom, You know, my parents split when I was little. That's a whole nother story. But I went to Austin to visit my mom, and she brought us down to the park. Juneteenth celebration. I'm like, Juneteenth? What's Juneteenth? Well, Juneteenth is the day that the slaves in Texas found out that they was free. What? What you mean Juneteenth? I thought it was like July 4th. When was the Emancipation Proclamation? Oh, it was 2 years after. I was like, 2 years? Wow. And ever since then, I've been Juneteenth. Festivals every year since I'm about 10 years old. When I moved here to Georgia, I love Georgia. Oh, look at them trees, man. I love this place, man. It reminds me of East Texas. The red dirt. Look at that red dirt. All the pine trees. It reminds me of East Texas a lot. Which is another conversation for another time. How the land from Texas all the way through to Florida, they call it the Black Belt. Down here, close to where I'm at, Rod, they call it a Nickajack Basin. Nickajack. What the hell is a Nickajack? There's nothing in the English language that makes sense, Nickajack. Nickajack Basin. All this land over here was all black folk. This was all our ancestral lands, right? And, we lost it. We lost it because of treachery of the slave trader. You understand what I'm saying? And now at least we reclaiming our dignity. Maybe we're not reclaiming our lands like that, which would be beautiful if we could, right? But we're at least reclaiming our dignity. And that's amazing. That's amazing. And I don't like to say that we haven't had our dignity this whole time, but reclaiming it on a large scale and a national view and an international view, because now there's people from all over the world, France, Germany, all over the world that's like getting in on the stuff that we are talking about. You know what I'm saying? On the messages that we're trying to remind, like, we're talking about the rights of indigenous people. We are indigenous people, and we have rights. And our rights have been trampled on by the one nation in the world that claims to support the rights of indigenous people the most. Whoa, that's a conundrum. And Juneteenth is right there in the face of all of that. And so I'm so grateful and so thankful for this now. Oh my goodness, you can't even imagine how grateful and thankful I am for this moment in time to be a witness to it and to be a participant of it and to have been part of the energy that has allowed this moment to manifest, because for a long time, a lot of people didn't know about no Juneteenth. And you're like, oh, Juneteenth is another opportunity to go barbecue and picnic. Oh, cool. All right, black folk picnic. Let me go get a place where I can go buy some black art, a little festival. Cool. Oh, what's the purpose of the festival? Oh, what's Juneteenth? Oh, for real? Like the same way, because we didn't learn this stuff when we was kids. This history is kept from us, and it's American history. It's not even black history. This is American history. You know what I'm saying? This part, the Juneteenth, you know what I'm saying? The reminder that a war was fought. Americans killed Americans so that humans would not be traded as cattle. That happened. And then 2 years later, folk was still breaking the law until Juneteenth, right? Now, of course, it didn't all just end right there, you know what I'm saying? But Juneteenth represents the official end of slavery, you know what I mean, on the books. And that's awesome. It's awesome, and it's necessary for the world to recognize and for the world to have a perspective on that. And also for it to be brought up into a much larger light. And we don't want to lose the tradition of experiencing Juneteenth for ourselves and by ourselves, Now, okay, now you're going to have Juneteenth sponsored by Ford. And, it's bound to come. And you're going to have Nikes with red, black, and green on it. It's bound to come, right? But even before that, like, this is the spirit that's going on right now of us preparing ourselves to take care of ourselves in the ways that we've known and we've always loved to do. We've always taken good care of ourselves. We've always taken good care of our children. We always take care of our elders. We've always taken good care of our handicap. We've always taken good care of our people period. We've always done that. And yeah, we've had disputes and we fought wars with each other to take over, to make sure that things would happen a certain way. You know, egos get involved and all of that's happened, and all that's happened across humanity. But but we've always taken care of our people, and we just have to be reminded of that, you know, in our inner selves, you know what I mean? And that's what this now is doing. You know what I mean? And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. Man, I can't even express my gratitude, you know, to be in this now and to see what's going on right now. But it also reminds me of something, to not be so, like I was saying a minute ago about how, you know, you're going to have Juneteenth. It won't take long. Juneteenth, sponsored by Ford. As necessary and as important and as beautiful as it is to include others in this particular celebration, because it's an American celebration, don't get it twisted, the spirit of Juneteenth has to stay with us. And it really has to be with us. When I say us, I mean who we are. Black folk, melanated folk, Moors, indigenous Americans, however we refer to ourselves this year, Negroes, so-called Negroes, African American, blacks, us, we know who we are, right? Yes. Look, one thing we got to keep in mind, man. So, like my man Eddie said, you know, don't fall for the banana in the tailpipe. We didn't fall for the banana in the tailpipe a couple times. You know what I mean? Like back in the Congo in 1492, you know, there was arguments going on amongst kings, you know what I mean? And so one king thought it would be prudent to get baptized and let the Portuguese come in with their muskets and fight on his side. They did that and lived side by side with the Portuguese, with the Congolese as brothers for a whole generation before they decided to plunder and steal. Yeah, they got in on the good side and waited for the guard to be down. And then they started raping the women and stealing the gold and the cobalt and everything else out of the mines. Come on, man. This is history. And the thing is, it's history of the world. So it's, you know, wherever there's been gold and guns and land, we got to be real about gold. We got to be real about our gold, our guns, and our land. All right. That's how we're going to keep ourselves intact. Now, we Americans, and this law, the law of the land, Second Amendment, so you have a right to bear arms, and it's considered to be a God-given right. Like God created guns or something. God created gold. God created land. God didn't create guns, but He did create Ogun. And Ogun is the Orisha and the power and the force of technology and steel and warfare, actually. You know what I mean? And so, you know, that energy is always going to be real in our existence. It's always going to be there, right? But how we relate to it is what matters the most. How we relate to it is what matters the most. You know what I mean? How we relate to it matters so much that it's kind of hard to understate it. You know what I mean? Like, it has to be understood that those energies is always going to be here, and we have to have the best relationship with that energy that we can possibly have. You know what I mean? And so I'm going back to say this here. Look, I'm talking about our spiritual selves and how we move through this space and time and our psychological reality and all that. But also I'm talking about some practical stuff too. You know what I mean? We got to get serious about our guns, like owning them and defending our right to own them, and being legal. Follow the law, follow the protocols of the state, follow the protocols of the county, follow the protocols as it deals with dealing with the police, right? Because the guns is Oguns, the police is Ogun too, right? So when we dealing with guns, we dealing with the police, we dealing with all of that, and we deal with it in the right way. Law-abiding citizens, law-abiding Second Amendment defenders. You understand what I'm saying? Law-abiding Second Amendment defenders. The way we're going to be able to free ourselves really, and we knew this too. Like, this ain't no brand new knowing. Like, We fought in the Civil War. We fought to keep the treachery of the Confederate nation, the Confederate United States, as it called itself, from tearing up the Constitution of the United States. We fought to defend the United States. Yeah, black folk fought to free themselves from slavery. No, we fought to defend the United States of America. We fought to defend the Constitution of the United States. And that Constitution is what we're using on Earth at this time as a marker of, I'd say a moniker of how we supposed to deal with each other as human beings. That's really the flagship for the world right now. The Constitution of the United States. It's the flagship document for the world. The UN, all of Europe, all of Africa, all of the world looks at the United States for guidance on how to deal with your neighbor. How senseless or beneficial that is or isn't is up for debate, but the fact of the matter is that's what it is. And the Constitution of the United States is defendable, largely. There's been some problems with it, and and a lot of those problems have been amended, right? But here's the fact. Wherever there's been treachery in the world, it's been guns involved, gold involved, and land involved. And whenever people needed to be able to protect themselves, they needed land. They would protect themselves against their land and their gold, and they needed their guns in order to do it. That's a three-piece right there for you. That's a three-piece. So right now, look, black folk, get your shit together. Like, if you sitting on a wad of cash in a safe deposit box somewhere and a proverbial shit hit the fan, what you got? If you even access the bank, you ain't got nothing but toilet paper when you get there. There's been currencies that have defunct nationwide. There's been currencies that started and stopped within a matter of weeks. There's currencies that live for extended periods, and then just one day they had value and the next day they had no value. There's currencies that every other year the value drops by, it plummets constantly. I'm not gonna name any of these currencies. If you want to know, you can look them up. But I'm gonna tell you this here. People looking at the price of beef talking about, wow, $8 for a pound of beef? Wow. This same rifle was $300 just 2 years ago, and today it's $1,000. Prices aren't going up. Prices ain't going up. Yeah, in some cases profits are going up, but prices aren't going up. What's changing is the value of the dollar. That's what's changing. And I need you to understand that when companies in America have to pay oil buyers to take their oil, they have to pay companies negative $30 a barrel for oil. And on the world stage, the dollar and oil are tied together. OPEC is a trading mechanism for the dollar versus the barrel of crude oil. And when crude oil is going for negative $30 a barrel, most people don't understand economics. A lot of people don't understand monetary systems. But I'm going to tell you, your boy understand it well enough to let you know prices of beef ain't going up. The value of the dollar is going down. Down, down, down. I remember in 2009, I met a lady who had a $400-something thousand 401k the day before the crash. And when I met her, it was a few days after it, and she said she had lost the vast majority of her. She had 480, I think it was 480-something odd thousand dollars in 401k. And the day I met her, her 401k value was less than 100,000. That's insane. And it reflects her working. Now, here's the crazy part about that. The same company, like the heads of the companies that she worked for, they didn't lose value. No, their net worth didn't have any significant change. The companies that managed her funds, their CEOs and presidents and higher ups, They didn't lose any significant value of their portfolios either. Why? Because they were bailed out. But she lost her shirt. Now, I'm not saying don't invest in the stock market. I'm not saying don't invest in 401ks. But I'm saying if you got $300,000 in a 401k and you got a $200,000 mortgage, I'm not a financial advisor. You need to go talk to your CPA or your financial advisor. I am a real estate broker licensed in the state of Georgia. You know what I mean? So I do have a little bit of perspective, and I have been working in tax prep business for a little bit, so I get some of this stuff. I do have some perspective. I'm just telling you what I would do if I had a mortgage of 300. If I had a mortgage of 200,000, I had $300,000 in my 401k. In this climate, I would take that $200,000 from my $200,000 of my 401k and transfer that into my mortgage to get that deed in my hand. Straight up. Use probably another 50,000 of my 401k and buy at least 2 rifles, 2 shotguns, a handful of ammunition, and the rest in gold. And leave a little bit in the 401k just for shits and giggles. But we're in a recession, and the value of the dollar is going to go down. Corporations are going to figure some of this stuff out, and they're going to keep certain industries are going to keep their value, but a lot of industries aren't. Restaurants, hotels, travel, you already see. Virgin Australia is grounded their entire fleet. They're out of business. That's a whole airline out of business in less than 2 weeks. I'm saying, y'all, the reality is that we're in a recession. We're in an economic downturn, whether they're calling it a recession or not. Everybody says, oh, this is probably one of the worst economic turns since the Great Depression. Wow. If this is one of the worst economic turns since the Great Depression, and 2009 economic crash was really considered a recession, wouldn't that make this situation at least a recession? If not damn near a depression, if it's the worst since the Great Depression? I mean, the Great Depression was the Great Depression, but you can probably have a not so great depression and it still be a depression, but it's at least is a recession, because 2009 was certainly a recession. But you ain't heard none of that about what's going on right now. You've heard about money coming out. Oh, taking this stimulus, take this stimulus. Stimulate why? What you need a stimulus? What I need a stimulus for? Why is the government giving out money? What's the point? Unless we in a recession, unless we in a state of economic downheaval. But the Dow Jones look right? Okay, look. The revolution will not be televised. You already heard it. You already know, right? The fact of the matter is, if you got a 401k, buy gold, buy guns, buy land, buy pawn shops. Buy pawn shops. If you don't want to buy gold and you don't want to buy guns, buy pawn shops and let your pawn shops buy gold and buy guns. Hey, this is your boy. I love you. Happy Juneteenth. Love your family. Love your neighbor. Call on your ancestors and continue to be a light for the world. Hey, we got a lot of work to do, and we got time to do it, but let's not be haphazard with our time. Hey, love you. Ask Adeleke.